I have started my village couple stories ago, but I don't pay attention to them. I will build some building for villagers. But while I am busy doing all of this hard work, I am going to spend my time reading a big collection of stories that I found on the Reddit website. Okay, we have a lot of stories to get through today, so let us just go ahead and start with the very first story right now. The first question is, am I the bad guy for deciding to skip my very own surprise birthday party once I found out that the party was not actually meant to celebrate me? I have never really been a big fan of birthday parties. To make things clear, I do not exactly hate them, but I just really prefer small and quiet events. Maybe just a nice and quiet dinner with my absolute closest friends, or maybe just sitting down and watching a movie together. I just want something very small and simple, basically. Everybody who knows me very well already knows this fact about me, and this is especially true for my sister. Let us just call her Maya for this story. My sister is the kind of person who loves making huge and dramatic gestures, and she truly believes that every single birthday or big achievement needs to have balloons, a specific theme, and a whole lot of extra stuff. 2 weeks before my birthday was going to happen, Maya started acting really weird and strange. She kept asking me over and over again if I was going to be free and available that specific Saturday. And she acted very suspicious when I asked her why she was asking so many questions. I started to suspect that she was secretly planning some kind of big event, so I told her once again that I absolutely did not want any kind of party. She just laughed at me and said that I was being a total spoilsport, just like I always do. Then, just a few nights ago, which was the exact evening right before my actual birthday, one of the people that we both know accidentally let it slip that a big party was being planned for me. This person even told me what kind of clothes they were planning to wear to the event. As it turned out, our entire family had been invited to this big gathering, which was going to be held at our parents' house. Some of my coworkers were also invited to come, but here is the really big and important detail that changed everything. Maya had also sent an invitation to my ex-boyfriend. To give you a little bit of background information, my ex-boyfriend and I broke up and stopped dating about 2 months ago. The way we broke up was really bad and very angry. Even though there was no hitting or cheating involved, it was definitely not a friendly or nice ending to the relationship. I have made it very, very clear to everyone in my entire life that I do not want to have any contact with him ever again. Maya completely knows this fact about my wishes. Even with this knowledge, she has told me many times that I should just get over the whole situation, saying that he is actually a good guy and has been around in our lives for a very long time. The very first thing I did as soon as I found out this shocking information was to call Maya on the phone and demand an explanation for what she was doing. She did not try to deny it at all. She just simply told me that my ex and I could finally have a nice talk to fix our problems. She actually admitted that the party was not just for my birthday. It was also planned as a chance for everyone to hang out with my ex again and for the two of us to get back together. She actually used those exact words when talking to me. She even said that I would be super thankful to her later on for doing this. I was incredibly angry and furious. I told her that she had absolutely no right to do something like this to me, and that I would have been forced into a very uncomfortable situation on my own special birthday. And she did all of this after I had clearly told her that I hated the idea of a big party. She just brushed off my worries, calling me dramatic and ungrateful. And she insisted that she planned this whole event because I would never find a better guy than him, thinking it was a generous gift for me. She pointed out that everyone else had already bought gifts and traveled a long way, and that everybody was really looking forward to the event. So, yesterday, which was my actual birthday, I completely turned off my cell phone and did not tell anyone where I was going, with the only exception being my absolute best friend. Because of this, we had a very relaxed and nice lunch and went for a pleasant walk together. I ended up having a truly wonderful and happy day with my best friend. When I finally came back to the house, I turned my phone back on, and the scene that I saw was total chaos. Maya was extremely furious with me. A lot of the guests were very disappointed. Some of them even said that I had embarrassed Maya in front of everyone. Maya is now basically saying that I completely ruined the whole event and made everything about myself. But after all of that, it was, in fact, my birthday. She keeps saying that her intentions were good and pure, and that I should at least say sorry for not showing up and for not telling anyone where I was. So, am I the bad guy in this situation? This whole situation is completely crazy and ridiculous. I truly feel bad for the person who shared this story. If someone is throwing a surprise party for you, they should only invite people that you actually like and enjoy being around. It is completely crazy and nonsensical to invite someone's ex-boyfriend to their surprise birthday party. That is just way too weird and bizarre. I think her sister just wanted an excuse to hang out with her ex-boyfriend, which is weird by itself. Or maybe she was just desperately hoping to be the person who gets her sister and her ex-boyfriend back together, which is also very strange. It is a nice thought for Maya to want to throw a surprise birthday party for her sister, but it is totally inappropriate to do it with a secret and hidden agenda. Just like the original poster said, it is not an ambush. It is supposed to be a celebration. Therefore, no, I do not think the original poster did anything wrong by not going to the party. Maybe the way she handled the situation could have been a little bit more polite. For example, completely turning off her phone and ignoring everyone who traveled a long way just to celebrate her birthday could be seen as a pretty rude and inconsiderate thing to do. However, it is completely understandable why she did it. I can totally understand her actions and why she felt that way. She is absolutely not forced to spend time with her ex-partner if she does not want to. And if she prefers to turn off her phone and spend the day with her best friend instead, then that is completely her right to do so. However, there are a lot of comments on this post suggesting that the original poster should probably send messages to everyone who came to the party to say sorry. I actually agree with this idea. I think a personal message to each person who was there, simply saying something like, "Hello, I am so sorry. My sister invited my ex-boyfriend, and I felt very uncomfortable going to my own party. I am truly sorry," would go a really long way in fixing the friendships with those friends whom she basically stood up. It is a pretty complicated situation, but I firmly believe the original poster is not the bad guy here. It seems like her sister, Maya, purposely put her in a situation where she would look like the bad guy in front of all her friends, leaving her to now deal with the mess and help her friends understand what really happened. I used to be the kind of person who absolutely hated surprise parties, and I also believed that I could never be surprised. In other words, I thought that if my friends were planning a surprise party for me, I would definitely find out about it somehow. However, it turns out that I am actually pretty easy to trick, because I have had 2 surprise parties thrown for me and I had absolutely no idea they were happening. Nevertheless, it is also very important to understand the person you are dealing with. If a person clearly says they do not want a surprise party, then you should not plan one for them. The next question is, did I do something wrong by telling the cashier that the credit card did not belong to the young woman? I am using a secret throwaway account to post this because my husband told me that I was completely in the wrong, and I need to find out if he is right before I go back home for a big argument. Today, I was at a very fancy and expensive department store, and I happened to be standing near 2 teenage girls while I was looking at things to buy. One of these girls had picked out a very expensive pair of boots, and they were both saying how much they loved them. The second girl must have looked at the price tag and asked the girl with the boots if she was really planning to spend that much money on just one pair of boots. The girl with the boots answered by saying something like, "It is totally fine. I have my dad's credit card with me. I am not paying for it with my own money." This immediately caught my attention because it was very obvious that the card did not belong to her. I have told my own son many times that he is never allowed to use my credit card. Because of this, I was curious to see how this young girl thought she could get away with what looked like potential fraud. However, at that moment, the girls walked away to look at something else. As we were all walking to the checkout counters to pay, we ended up at the exact same register, with me standing right behind the 2 girls. I saw that her total cost was way over $1,000. The girl was about to swipe her card when I decided that I could not just let this happen without saying something, because I believed someone needed to teach this child a lesson about right and wrong if no one else would. I told the cashier that the card was not hers, but rather it belonged to her father, and that I was not sure if she actually had permission to use it. The girl and her friend turned around and stared at me with what was probably the most angry and hateful look I have ever seen in my life. I truly thought this girl was about to start screaming and throwing a tantrum right there in the store. I doubt she had ever been told no or refused anything before in her life. The girl then told the cashier that her father had given her the card specifically to buy things with, and she added that it was the store's specific credit card, which gave her father extra loyalty points. Now that I had pointed out to the cashier that the card was not in her name, The cashier told the girl that she could not use that specific card. The girl tried to show her ID to prove that they had the same last name, which, by the way, would not really help her case at all. I then repeated that using the card like this was considered fraud. The girl snapped back at me, saying that it was not fraud because she had permission, and she told me to mind my own business. I answered her by saying that it was definitely my business when someone was doing something illegal, and that she needed to pay with her own card, or else I would call the police. At that point, the girl was extremely furious, and other people shopping in the store were giving me dirty looks. She ended up using her own personal card and left the store crying. The cashier looked very unhappy with me, and when I told the whole story to my husband, he agreed with the cashier and said that I had been in the wrong. So, was I the bad guy here? Yes, ma'am, you were completely and totally in the wrong. I often find that my opinion on these kinds of stories is that people should just mind their own business and stay out of it. However, this is a perfect example of someone who really needs to do exactly that. You are not the checkout police. Why? Why do you need to worry about what other people are doing? Was it annoying that this girl was bragging about spending $1,000 of her father's money on a pair of boots? Maybe it was, but it was not really your business to get involved. I do not know. It is his money, and they are free to set up whatever financial rules they want in their family. And while she might judge these young women, it is not her job to parent them, even though she seems to think it is. Furthermore, confronting two teenage girls, who are probably much younger than you, in line at a department store is just not appropriate and makes you look bad. I think this person who posted the story expected to get a standing ovation from the store workers for what she did. I just do not understand why this poster is so deeply invested in what other people are doing. Whenever I am shopping at stores, I am only focused on buying what I need and getting out of there as fast as possible. I do not have the time or the desire to watch how other people pay for their things at the checkout. In any case, this post gives off very strong Karen vibes. Let us move on to the next story. The next question is, am I overreacting and being too crazy about my boyfriend and his female best friend? My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 months now. We have a really great connection, and I love him so much. He treats me like a queen, and I cannot imagine my future with anyone else. We are both in our 20s and live about 30 minutes away from each other. I am not usually a jealous or insecure person at all, but this specific situation has been really bothering me a lot. My boyfriend is currently in a fast-track school program, and he knows this young woman who is some kind of leader in their group or something like that based on how he talks about her. I assume she is very smart. He talks about her every now and then. During the school term, they work together a lot on homework and group projects. He has said many times that she is mostly the reason he is passing and doing well in the program. To be clear, I am really thankful that he has a friend who can help him with his schoolwork. I first started to think that their friendship might be a problem about 2 months ago, maybe. She came to his house around 11 o'clock at night to drop off some dessert or something similar. I was hanging out with him and he had other friends over too. He told me she was coming, and I immediately asked why this girl would drive all the way to his house so late at night just to give him something she could have easily given him at school during the day. He tried to brush off my worries, but his friends eventually made it obvious that she probably has a crush on him. He mentioned that he sometimes hugs her, but he insisted that their relationship is completely just friends. He tried to explain it by saying that she is Muslim, and since he is not Muslim and he drinks alcohol and smokes, it was basically impossible for her to have real romantic feelings for him. I did not like that excuse at all, and his friend went outside with him to get the dessert. After they came back inside, his friend told me that they had hugged each other again outside, which really upset me, and I told him that he needed to set clear boundaries with her. This issue did not come up again until recently, during his family's Christmas Eve party. His whole extended family was there for exchanging gifts and eating dinner. I was introduced to everyone, and it was a really fun and nice evening. However, about an hour after I got there, this young woman showed up. My boyfriend had not told me that he invited her. I was in his bedroom when he casually said hello to her without any warning. Eventually, she left, and I told him how much her being there bothered me, especially since he did not mention it to me at all. He claimed he forgot he invited her and that his main reason for inviting her was just to be polite. He often says that his friendship with her is only for school purposes, since she is a leader, and that once he graduates, he will not need to be friends with her anymore. I did not really believe that excuse, but he seemed really sorry, so I let it go. Since then, I have found myself thinking about their friendship more and more. Sometimes, when I borrow his laptop, messages from her pop up. Tonight, I was sleeping over at his house, but he works the night shift, so he is not home right now. I decided to look at his messages with her on his tablet. Yes, I know this was a really bad and sneaky thing to do because you are supposed to trust your partner and so on. You do not need to yell at me for this. I know it was a terrible thing to do and I should not have done it. The very first message I saw from her was a huge paragraph basically saying how much she loved him. Because of this, I kept scrolling down. These pictures show all the suspicious messages I found between them from the time we started dating. About 3 months ago, she sends him heart emojis a lot, and they have even told each other, "I love you." At this point, I am feeling angry, hurt, and totally confused. If this was just a friend relationship to help him pass his classes, I would expect their messages to look like normal friends. Another thing that bothers me is that, based on these messages, it looks like he has gone to her house many times to eat meals, something he never told me. She even drove him and a friend to the airport for a weekend trip to Florida, even though he told me his mom was going to drive them. I had even offered to drive them myself if his mom could not do it. He never told me that she was the one who drove them. What should I do? If I confront him, I will have to admit that I looked at his messages. I will probably have to confess that anyway, but do I have a good reason to be suspicious? As a side note, he has talked a lot about how an ex-girlfriend cheated on him, and this is now his biggest fear. Right now, it almost seems like he is using this as a distraction. Here are pictures of the text messages this poster found on the guy's tablet. Usually, I would read all of these out loud, but there are way too many to do that. So, I will just show them on the screen for a second, and you can pause the video if you want to read them all. But to give a short summary for those just listening, it seems that the boyfriend and this female friend are a lot closer in these messages than he told his girlfriend. It is clear that he is lying about how close they are. They use a lot of loving words, calling each other boo and baby, and saying, "I love you" a lot. There are many heart emojis and things like that. There is no absolute proof, no smoking gun that shows for sure that he cheated. However, this definitely does not look good. For example, here he says, "Hope you're having sweet dreams," with an exclamation point. I cannot imagine sending a message like that to a female friend who is just a friend. This part shows him thanking her for the ride to the airport, which he lied about to his girlfriend. He writes, "On the plane now. Thank you so much for driving. My battery is at 2% again, so I'll send you money once my phone is charged. Please just accept the lunch/dinner money. It's truly insignificant compared to the things you do for me." She replies, "You don't need to thank me. You're family now. No, that's fine. Please keep your money. Have a wonderful trip and please be safe. Do nothing that I wouldn't do. Love you. Text me when you land." Heart emoji. Then, a few days later, she says, "Good morning, sunshine. I trust you had a safe flight back. Let me know if you require assistance with your airport transfer." Throughout this whole conversation, however, they keep saying how strong their friendship is. So, maybe they are just very affectionate friends. But if that is true, then he needs to be completely honest with his girlfriend about how close they are. Because I cannot blame this poster for feeling suspicious when looking at these messages. He is clearly hiding something or lying about his relationship with this girl. On one hand, he says his friendship with her is only for school. But on the other hand, he is texting her every day, saying, "I love you," or wishing her sweet dreams. I am not sure. I think this poster has a good reason to be suspicious of this guy. Now, should this poster have looked through her partner's messages? No, I usually think that is a pretty bad thing to do. My rule is that if you are secretly looking at your partner's messages to find proof they are doing something wrong, there is a much bigger problem in the relationship that needs to be fixed. Also, if you actively look for problems, you are always going to find them. This is especially true if you are the kind of person who gets jealous of your boyfriend hugging a female friend, like this poster is. Just trust your partner. And if you cannot trust your partner, then that is your answer. You need to break up and move on. And I suspect the boyfriend will probably argue that he did not want to tell his girlfriend how close they are because she seemed a little anxious or jealous, or whatever the reason is. And at first, when I read the story, I might have agreed and thought she was being too hard on him. However, after looking at these message exchanges, I am now completely on her side. I think the problems start when people act sneaky, like this guy is doing. There are some opinions in the comments that I agree with. One person said, "The fact that he lied about who drove him to the airport and about visiting her would be the deciding factor for me, not even the text messages themselves." Another person replied, "Exactly, I feel that some of the texts can be explained except for the constant 'I love yous.' However, the fact that he is lying to her, going on dinner dates with his friend, forgetting that he invited her to events, along with his friends saying there is a romantic connection and him still not keeping his distance, is just too much to ignore without there being something more going on. I am not totally sure, though. I am eager to hear what you guys think about this. I have just been making up this building as I go, which is pretty normal for this very professional Minecraft YouTube channel, but I just noticed that I put the door completely off to the side, and I do not even like where it is located right now. Okay, I stopped the recording and made a few small fixes. I did not really change a whole lot. The main things I added were these kinds of indoor window features. I think this house is good enough for right now. I could put a lot more work into it, but I am going to go ahead and start working on some other houses. My best friend is having a really hard time with money. I have been asking him to come work at the restaurant where I have been working for several months, and today he finally admitted that he does not want to work as a waiter, saying that it is a humiliating job and that people would not respect him. I found this to be incredibly insulting. The person who shared this story is a 31-year-old man, and his best friend, who he was talking about, is a 33-year-old man. Also, to give you a little more background, this story was originally posted back in the year 2018. My friend is completely broke. He has not had a job for over a year and is using up all his savings, and he has even started asking his parents for money. I have asked him many times why he does not think about getting a job outside of his specific field. He has a college degree in computer science but has never actually used it for a job since he graduated. Furthermore, he has said no to a lot of job offers for different reasons, like the pay being too low or not getting a promotion right away. I am fully aware that his expectations are totally unrealistic, but he has a lot of other really great qualities, which is exactly why I value him as a friend. So, since he graduated, the only work he has done is in share marketing, which is basically just online trading in foreign money markets. He claimed he was making about $20 a day, which was enough for him. He is single, lives in a shared house, and lives very cheaply. Whatever makes him happy, right? The main problem is that he is completely out of money. I doubt he is even making $20 a day from his share trading, given that he is running out of funds. He is under a ton of stress and is always complaining about his money problems. This whole situation leaves me totally confused, and I suspect it all comes from his huge ego. He just cannot accept a job that does not match his pride. Right now, I am working as a waiter at a really nice and fancy restaurant, and many times I have offered for him to come work with me there. I have a really great relationship with my manager, and after I explained my friend's money problems, he immediately offered to help, easily suggesting a full-time job for my friend. For months, my friend has consistently said no to this opportunity, giving almost no real reasons. Today, however, he called me, telling me that his parents stopped giving him money and asking if he could borrow some cash from me. I repeated my personal rule of never lending money to anyone, but I also stressed that he was more than welcome to start working with me as early as tomorrow. He once again said no to the offer, and I found myself getting really frustrated. Here I am, giving him a real solution to his money problems, and he stubbornly refuses to take it. This led to a somewhat angry argument, during which he finally admitted his real feelings. He thinks being a waiter is a humiliating job, one that does not get the respect of other people. I argued back that respect is earned through hard work and a willingness to do whatever it takes to pay your bills. I then asked him if he thought I was low, to which he backed up, saying it was not about me specifically, but rather the job itself. He then directly said that no one could possibly respect someone working as a waiter in their 30s. Honestly, I am pretty disappointed. The idea that he thinks my current job is beneath him is really hurting. I also have a college degree, but I could not find good jobs in my field. forcing me to take the first job I could find. I am not some snobby person who thinks they are too good to serve others. I take real pride in my work as a waiter and try to be the best at it. Therefore, his comments have really hurt me. If he thinks so little of me, why do we even call ourselves friends? I made a conscious effort to stop myself from saying anything mean or getting into a huge fight. Because of this, I just told him that his comments were highly offensive and that I thought he needed some time to think about what he had said. He snapped back that there was nothing to think about and went on to list other supposedly low-status jobs, like street sweeper and cleaner, saying, "It's a fact that those are low, not respected jobs." I asked for an apology before things got into a complete breakup, but he stood firm in his belief. While I try not to overreact, I question if this friendship can even continue moving forward. I am at a loss as to what to do. My feeling is not to say bad things about him, yet I feel he needs to look inside himself and learn to be more understanding. I consider myself to be a very easygoing and forgiving person, but his statements have caused me a lot of pain and strike me as totally foolish. The very person who refuses to work is judging me for my job. I find myself unsure of the right thing to do. In fact, I am not even sure more talking is needed. Surely we all find this person's behavior horrible, correct? I understand that this was written a while ago, but especially in today's world, the job market is extremely hard. Getting a job is a massive challenge. People with university degrees are having a really hard time finding work. Because of this, when someone is unemployed, it is hardly the right time to look down on a potential job opening. Nor is it appropriate, when unemployed, to judge others for the work they do to support themselves. I can totally understand this person's desire to get a job that he believes will give him respect or that will use the degree he spent a ton of money on. However, it really seems like he is using these excuses as a reason to be lazy, preferring to stay home and then criticize the jobs of others. It is, quite frankly, infuriating. This person is truly the worst. And if I were the person who originally shared this story, I would indeed feel deeply insulted by his statements. Moreover, I would feel pretty foolish for even trying to help him find a job in the first place. However, there is actually an update to this story. The original poster came back after more interaction with his friend and gave an extra update. Let me read it quickly. In a pretty surprising turn of events, he called me today, saying that he had thought about it a lot and had decided he was willing to take the job, but with one single condition, as if he were doing me a huge favor. His condition was that he be made manager right away and that he be allowed to live with me so that I could drive him to work, since the bus ride from his house to my job takes 35 minutes, which equals over an hour of commuting every day. He further suggested that I move my youngest daughter into my eldest daughter's room to make an empty bedroom for him in my house. Clearly, he had put some thought into these demands. I was totally speechless. The sheer boldness of his sense of entitlement and the size of his pride, which forced him to make such demands, is astonishing. I know he has never had a normal job, yet he is not stupid. He must surely realize that you cannot be made manager without even knowing the names of the food on the menu or how to serve coffee. It is entirely a matter of his ego. His pride is far bigger than I had previously imagined. He lacks the humility to accept a waiter job and work his way up. He needs an immediate promotion to manager to soften the blow to his ego. To be perfectly honest, I was rendered speechless and wanted to get away from the conversation, so I hung up the phone. I am incapable of describing how totally off-putting that discussion was. I feel repulsed by him. I feel disgusted, as though something fundamental inside me has changed. I cannot entertain the presence of such a person in my life. What makes a person reject all help just because of an overblown sense of pride? My wife suggests that I have shown more than enough patience and kindness towards him over the years, and that I should just let him deal with his own problems. I acknowledge his lack of money, but then why does he refuse this job opportunity? He is not shy, nor does he suffer from any mental health issues, nor does he have trouble talking to people. He has rejected many other job offers in the past, including jobs directly related to his degree. He has the mistaken idea that he deserves to be pushed to higher roles just because of who he is, believing that this is what he is owed. This is the underlying reason he has stayed unemployed since graduating roughly a decade ago. In any event, I need a lot of deep thinking and a reevaluation of this friendship, as I find myself disliking the person he is becoming. His father is a bus driver, and his mother is a retired teacher. They are wonderful, humble, and grounded people. I believe they have acted correctly by stopping their financial help. I know they are both having money troubles, so it is unfair for their son to be a financial burden on them. His mother even tried to go back to tutoring to make extra money to support my friend. I would be deeply embarrassed if I forced my 70-year-old mother to go back to work so that I could stay at home, dreaming of getting the perfect job while making no active efforts to get it. Forgive me, I am just quite angry. My wife contends that it is time to cut ties and distance ourselves from him. I suspect she might be right. Indeed, you know what? Following that update, my perspective has shifted. I would indeed choose to end the friendship with this person. I am unsure. I just would no longer wish to hang out with him. If he has such a deep sense of entitlement and pride that he is demanding a manager position at your restaurant when you are merely offering a waiter role out of goodwill, and he has absolutely no prior experience, I do not know. It would fundamentally change how you see your friend, and you would view them in an entirely new light. This poster has shown remarkable kindness towards his friend, offering a job and trying to provide support during this hard time. If he does not respect your job and is too proud to take your offer, then, frankly, it makes one question his basic values and views on a myriad of subjects. I wish to be careful, as my words might be misunderstood as shaming people for their job status, which is definitely not my intention. As I have said before, getting a job is extremely hard right now. My only point is that this specific person is deplorable because he has a condescending attitude towards others who are working, while he himself remains jobless. The next question is, am I in the wrong for choosing a wedding where the lights will be turned off? I am a 27-year-old woman, and I have the privilege of having the most wonderful parents. While they are not without their flaws, they have always dedicated themselves to making sure I am happy to the best of their abilities. Both of my parents are visually impaired and cannot see. Being raised by blind parents had its share of challenges, but we always managed to find solutions or compromises. However, a recurring point of argument, especially during my teenage years, revolved around clothes and personal style. My parents have a unique approach to fashion, prioritizing how things feel to the touch over how they look. This has resulted in them having a rather unconventional sense of style. I will admit that I found it rather disagreeable as a teenager, as I had no say in my own wardrobe choices. However, after I moved out, I came to realize that I genuinely preferred to feel comfortable in my clothes rather than focusing on how I appeared in them. It took many bad and expensive clothing purchases to arrive at this realization, but I digress. While my current wardrobe is no longer a jumble of mismatched items, it is undeniably cozy. With the wedding preparations in full swing, my future husband asked if I would be comfortable with the photographic documentation of the event. He did not intend this question maliciously. It simply had not occurred to him that my initial plan was to buy new clothing for my parents to wear, rather than them wearing their usual clothes. However, the more I thought about the matter, the more I considered the possibility. Would not a fabric wedding, an experience focused on non-visual senses, be more profoundly meaningful? Essentially, the entirety of the wedding ceremony and reception would take place in darkness. I recognized that my intention was not to dictate my parents' attire. Rather, I wished for them to feel at ease and to fully immerse themselves in our wedding day as they experience it. Furthermore, upon deeper reflection, I realized that I, too, desired to experience this special occasion through their unique perspective. My future husband, I assure you, is entirely unconcerned. In his view, the moment I accepted his proposal, I became his wife. To mitigate the risk of accidents, we will be employing glow stick illumination, and every guest will be provided with a glow bracelet and necklace. The luminescence will be sufficient to prevent collisions but not so intense as to illuminate the entire venue. Additionally, we are engaging event staff equipped with night vision capabilities. No, seriously, this is not a joke. We are also hiring event personnel who will be equipped with night vision gear. Upon making this announcement, the majority of my family expressed their support. My own family's approval is, of course, a given. My fiancé's family, however, is somewhat ambivalent. His brother enthusiastically embraces the concept and has even announced his intention to wear a velvet suit. Honestly, It is his parents who harbor the most significant objections. We had a rather heated disagreement over this matter, with them arguing that it is unfair to inconvenience the guests simply because my parents are visually impaired. The reason I believe I might be in the wrong is that a faction within his extended family, who are aligned with his parents' viewpoint, are vowing to boycott the wedding if we do not provide adequate lighting. My husband, however, maintains that it is their prerogative to decline attendance and that his parents will likely be present, albeit reluctantly. Nevertheless, I am aware that this situation could strain his relationship with them, and that is not something I desire. It is not that this is an issue I am prepared to fight to the death over, but this is my wedding, and this concept would hold profound significance for me. Am I in the wrong? Upon my initial perusal of this account, I found it almost unbelievable that such a scenario could be real. However, the original poster has consistently provided updates and additional context, leading me to consider the possibility of its authenticity. I shall now proceed to read some of these supplemental details. We have engaged the services of a wedding planner whose sole responsibility is to ensure the smooth and safe execution of the event. Their explicit role involves anticipating and addressing any potential contingencies to guarantee the safest possible experience for all attendees. Staff members equipped with night vision goggles will be stationed at each table, diligently monitoring the environment to ensure everyone's well-being. Consequently, should any individual require assistance or guidance, it will be readily provided. A total of 200 invitations were dispatched, and 121 guests have confirmed their attendance via RSVP. Each table is configured to accommodate 6 individuals. Therefore, at this juncture, we are providing support for 20 additional staff members to manage the tables for 121 guests, not including our own table or the designated exit areas. I have encountered numerous assertions that glow bracelets and necklaces will prove insufficient. Having attended numerous nightclubs and raves during my late teenage years and early 20s, I can definitively state that 120 individuals adorned with these accessories will provide adequate visibility, and the staff will manage any remaining concerns regarding potential tripping hazards and navigation. Many individuals who suggest I might be in the wrong are presenting well-reasoned arguments, and I am discussing these points with my future husband. I am also compiling a list of compelling counterpoints to review with my planner tomorrow. However, for those whose sole objection is their discomfort with the absence of visual clarity, that is precisely the intended outcome. You are not meant to see. If someone were to enter wearing an elaborate costume, I would be utterly delighted to encounter them. The wedding's focus will not be on visual enjoyment. Instead, it will be an immersive experience engaging the senses of hearing, smell, taste, and touch. I am firmly convinced that the capacity for enjoyment is not contingent upon sight. The notion of catering staff wearing night vision equipment strikes me as quite amusing. While I wholeheartedly support the pursuit of a wedding that aligns with one's personal vision, this particular approach seems to involve an excessive degree of complexity. If one were to crowd 120 individuals into a dimly lit space, including elderly relatives, it is highly probable that something would go awry. Your grandmother might trip and suffer a cardiac event. Something is bound to go wrong, and I understand the counterargument that individuals can simply choose not to attend. However, the essence of weddings is also about family members and friends having an enjoyable time and bearing witness to the union. This scenario, however, feels as though the original poster is orchestrating a potentially hostile environment. I acknowledge that the night vision-equipped catering staff are likely well prepared. I am, however, picturing Navy SEALs serving patrons their salmon. It does not sound like an entirely unenjoyable concept. I believe it could be a fun element if, perhaps, you were to dim the lights only towards the conclusion of the reception, for approximately an hour during the final few musical selections, and incorporate glow sticks, glow necklaces, and glow bracelets. That could indeed be quite entertaining. And if the objective is for guests to wear clothing that they find comfortable to your wedding, then simply remove any formal dress code, permitting everyone to wear whatever they deem appropriate during daylight hours. I am uncertain, though. Perhaps my perspective is too traditional. I do not believe I am suggesting anything outlandish, but perhaps I need to broaden my horizons to encompass the concept of dark weddings. That is certainly a rather unconventional idea. This post is from a few years ago, so I am curious to know if the event actually transpired. The next question is, am I in the wrong for not covering the cost of professionally framing my partner's birthday gift? I presented my partner with a painting for her birthday, created by one of her favorite artists. She already possesses several pieces by this particular artist. Some time ago, the artist held a sale and my partner expressed her inclination to purchase a piece, but she ultimately decided against it upon realizing the listed price was in USD and not CAD, rendering it prohibitively expensive. I subsequently purchased the artwork as a surprise for her birthday, at a cost of approximately 1,400 Canadian dollars. I believe CAD refers to Canadian currency or Canadian dollars. Do you use dollars where you are? Loon? I am not entirely sure what currency you use. It is Canadian. After I presented her with the painting, she informed me that the estimated cost for professional framing would be around 850 Canadian dollars. Apparently, this particular piece of artwork necessitates a specialized frame and protective glass to ensure its proper preservation, a recommendation also made by the artist. Furthermore, these pieces tend to appreciate in value over time, making appropriate framing a significant consideration. My partner is now expressing her displeasure, feeling that she is now obligated to bear the expense of the framing, which she states she cannot afford. She believes that since I acquired the artwork as a gift, I should have also agreed to cover the framing costs, and that otherwise it ceases to be a genuine gift if she is now required to expend an additional $850 due to it. From my perspective, I had already allocated a substantial sum towards the gift itself and was unaware of the considerable expense associated with the framing. I also had no intention of imposing a financial burden upon her. My sole desire was to surprise her with something meaningful. She also conveyed her frustration that she had to bring this matter to my attention and that I had not recognized or arrived at this conclusion independently. Am I in the wrong for not paying for the framing? To me, this appears to be an entirely unwarranted overreaction on the girlfriend's part. I would feel insulted if I were to give someone a very costly gift, only for their reaction to be, "Where is the remainder of my gift?" $1,400 is a considerable sum of money. It is a significant expenditure, and I believe that if someone is willing to invest that amount of money for you, you should express your gratitude. I am currently reviewing the comments on this post, and it does indeed seem to be of considerable importance to many individuals to ensure the proper preservation of valuable artwork. There is one particular comment that articulates this point quite effectively. As an artist myself and an art collector, I can attest that framing costs can sometimes rival the price of the artwork itself, particularly when specialized glass is required for certain oil-based media that exhibit prolonged drying times. However, each individual's circumstances are unique. My preference is to acquire a piece that I truly desire and to safeguard it securely until I am financially capable of framing it. I have, in fact, adopted this approach on several occasions. I also concur that a gift that comes with stipulations requiring further financial outlay is generally considered only a partial gift. Therefore, while I can empathize with her dissatisfaction, I also feel that she is displaying a distinct lack of appreciation, as art is, regrettably, a luxury in today's society. She is fortunate to have a thoughtful individual who considered her and expended such a significant sum on her behalf. $1,400 is not a trivial amount. Furthermore, I would add that $800 seems to be the amount she was willing to spend prior to discovering the price was listed in USD rather than CAD. I suppose, in a general sense, I find myself in agreement with that perspective. I fully comprehend the situation. The poster should likely be prepared to contribute some funds towards obtaining proper framing. However, as that comment suggests, it would be prudent to store the paintings safely for a period and then acquire frames at a later date, perhaps as another birthday present. In the immediate short term, I do not believe it should be such a significant issue. Reddit commentators have indicated that no one is in the wrong here, and I can appreciate their reasoning. I suppose I simply believe that the girlfriend's initial reaction demonstrated a considerable lack of gratitude. However, what do I know? I possess no expertise in the realm of art. I have resolved to forcibly relocate a number of villagers from their existing residences and resettle them in my newly constructed housing development. I do not believe I have ever disclosed this, primarily because I am rather embarrassed by it. This is the clandestine confinement I have established for my villager who offers mending services. I do not truly believe he provides me with particularly favorable deals on anything, but this is where I invariably go whenever I require a mending book. Why is this proving so insurmountable? What am I doing incorrectly here? I am aware that it is possible to attach leads to villagers. I am aware that this can be accomplished. All right, okay, thank goodness. I detest working with villagers, truly. All right, let us proceed, everyone. Welcome to your new abode. Honestly, with the villagers now inhabiting this space, it is already beginning to feel quite vibrant. The mending bookstore is situated here. This is where I have placed the villager who offers mending services. I am actually quite fond of the way this particular room has turned out. It possesses a somewhat whimsical ambience. I sincerely hope our villager appreciates it. He is effectively confined here indefinitely. And then next door. I absolutely did not intend for the interior of this room to resemble a dungeon, but it somehow evolved into that. This genuinely appears to be the least comfortable living space imaginable. Oh, excellent. There is a leak in the ceiling. Someone should really inform the landlord about that. All right, we have another wedding-related account here. We seem to have accumulated a considerable number of wedding stories, as well as accounts pertaining to individuals' occupations in this particular compilation. There appears to be a recurring theme developing. All right, in any event, this entry is titled Final Update from Photographer Who Deleted Her Friend's Wedding Pictures. Here is what the original poster wrote. I am not truly a photographer. I am a dog groomer. I take a multitude of photographs of dogs throughout the day to post on my Facebook and Instagram accounts. It is my personal endeavor, if that makes sense. Every canine client receives a trim and a photograph following their appointment. I seldom photograph subjects other than dogs, even when I have a well-equipped setup. A friend of mine recently got married, and in an effort to economize, he inquired if I would be willing to photograph their wedding. I informed him that it is not precisely my area of expertise, but he persuaded me by stating that he was not particularly concerned about the photos being flawless. They were operating on a severely limited budget, and I agreed to document their wedding for $250, a sum that is negligible for a 10-hour commitment. On the day of the event, I was navigating traffic, accompanying the bride as she moved from one pre-ceremony appointment to another, capturing photographs throughout the entire journey. I then documented the ceremony itself, and during the reception, I focused on capturing speeches and guests interacting. My workday commenced around 11 in the morning and was scheduled to conclude around 7:30 in the evening. Approximately 5 in the afternoon, as food was being served, I was informed that I could not take a break to eat because my role as the photographer was paramount. In fact, no place at any table had been reserved for me. I was starting to feel fatigued and was beginning to regret accepting such a meager payment. Furthermore, the conditions were incredibly uncomfortable due to the heat. The venue, an old Veterans Legion Hall, reached a staggering 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There was no air conditioning. I approached the groom and explained that I needed to step away for approximately 20 minutes to obtain some sustenance and hydration. There was no open bar, nor any other refreshments available. I could not even secure a bottle of water, and my 2 personal water bottles had long since been depleted. The groom informed me that I had a choice: either continue working as the photographer or depart without receiving any payment. Given the extreme heat, my hunger, and my general dissatisfaction with the circumstances, I inquired if he was certain about his statement, and he confirmed that he was. Consequently, I proceeded to delete all the photographs I had taken right in front of him and departed, stating that I was no longer their photographer. If I was to receive only $250, honestly, at that juncture, I would have willingly paid $250 myself just for a glass of cold water and a brief respite to sit down for 5 minutes. Was I the villain in this scenario? They proceeded directly to their honeymoon, and all of them have remained absent from social media platforms. However, numerous individuals have been posting inquiries on their respective social media walls seeking photographs, all of which have gone unanswered. I certainly have a great deal to contemplate regarding this situation, and I unequivocally stand with the original poster. Frankly, the groom's behavior towards her was appalling, so I can completely understand her perspective. Furthermore, she was being compensated inadequately, and denying her any relief whatsoever is utterly unreasonable. However, there are actually further developments to this narrative, so I will proceed to recount them without delay. This initial update originates from 4 weeks following the publication of the original post. The bride reached out to me upon their return from their honeymoon and requested my account of the events. I am unaware of when the groom shared his version of the story, but it was not an accurate portrayal. He informed her that I encountered camera malfunctions and subsequently lost the photographs. I provided her with a straightforward explanation of what transpired, emphasizing that while I felt a degree of remorse, their treatment of someone who was essentially doing them a favor was unacceptable. She had no prior knowledge of any of these details and inquired if there was any possibility of reconciliation. We engaged in further discussion, and I agreed to arrange a reshoot of some photographs later in the season. She expressed a desire for images of just the couple in an outdoor setting, close-ups of the rings, and some artistic shots, and that was all. She offered the initial sum of $250, and I accepted, stipulating that I would immediately cease participation at the slightest indication of any unreasonableness from either of them. Regarding the original photographs, I suggested bringing my SD card to a facility that could attempt data recovery, but at their expense. The bride declined this offer. Word did eventually circulate on social media concerning some aspects of the situation, and we reached an agreement to discreetly handle the matter and attempt to mitigate or downplay the incident. Now, for one final brief update, 7 weeks after the initial post, I withdrew from the subsequent photo shoot. It was originally scheduled for later in November to allow for photographs with a snowy backdrop, but a few nights prior, they requested if I could conduct it the day before yesterday. I had no prior engagements that day, so I agreed. I selected a location I found appealing, given the abundance of wineries and vineyards in our vicinity. Additionally, it is relatively close to my residence. I met them there, and they were both elegantly dressed and prepared. We gathered around my vehicle while I unloaded my lighting equipment and gear bag, and I discussed the planned sequence of the shoot with them. I outlined the specific shots I intended to capture, the placement of the lighting, their poses, and so forth. I requested assistance from the husband in carrying sandbags, but he refused, stating that being a photographer was my responsibility, not his. At that precise moment, something within me shifted, and I began reloading my equipment back into the vehicle and drove away, despite their protests. I remarked that when they eventually decide to remarry, they should not contact me to photograph their ceremony. I closed my windows, locked the doors, and departed. Upon arriving home, the very first action I took was to block them entirely. This relationship was already tenuous, but this incident solidified their status as unpleasant individuals, and it would be in my best interest to maintain no association with them. In summation, my investment in this particular shoot consisted of approximately 30 minutes spent strategizing the shots and a 5-minute drive in each direction. This assessment does not account for the preceding day that I essentially lost. At the very least, I find some satisfaction in knowing that I contributed to the waste of their time and resources on their hair and makeup, among other things. Moreover, I am realizing that I am not particularly suited for this line of work. I require more practical experience, specifically in managing client interactions, before I undertake this type of engagement again, as I am rapidly discovering that I am developing a dislike for this aspect of the profession. I truly believed that this would culminate in a more positive conclusion, considering how things were progressing for a while. I suppose it is positive in the sense that the poster managed to extricate themselves from those detestable individuals. Well, actually, the bride does not at all seem like an unreasonable person. The bride actually appeared quite understanding of the poster's predicament and was making a concerted effort to mend the situation. It is genuinely unfortunate that her husband was incapable of refraining from being obnoxious for even a brief period. And what was this husband even doing? If your photographer has been working tirelessly for about 10 hours, she absolutely deserves a respite. It is his own fault for engaging only one photographer. And then, if she requests assistance with carrying equipment or sandbags, or whatever the case may be, simply lend a hand with the load, my friend. I must confess, this situation is genuinely agitating me. I am relieved that the poster managed to extricate themselves from that environment. The next question is, am I the antagonist for refusing to hold the door for a woman? Recently, I, a 38-year-old female, enrolled my daughter in a new daycare facility. The entry system is comparable to both daycares. You input a code and a password into a keypad, which then unlocks the door. Only individuals authorized for child pickup are provided with the code, and these individuals have their identification verified and are on record with the daycare. At the previous daycare, the directive was that one should not hold the door open for anyone. Each new entrant was required to use the code to gain access. They did not explicitly communicate this rule at the new daycare, but I presumed it to be the case, and it is certainly a policy that I endorse. The other day marked one of my initial visits to the new daycare. As I entered, an elderly woman, likely in her late 60s, was standing directly behind me. I entered the code, and she attempted to follow me through the doorway. I partially obstructed the entrance with my body and stated, "I apologize. I believe you need to use the entry pad." She responded, "Oh, I am just somebody's grandmother." I replied, "Understood, but I still do not believe I am permitted to allow you entry. There is a button right there where you can request the front desk attendant to grant you access." She huffed and inquired, "Are you truly not going to let me in?" And I responded, "My apologies. I will notify someone inside that you are awaiting entry." I then closed the door behind me and alerted a staff member that someone was waiting. Approximately 10 seconds later, I heard the door open behind me. The woman was walking in directly behind me, muttering under her breath the entire way and casting a disapproving glance at me once she had passed. I am confident that she perceived me as the antagonist. When I shared this incident with my husband, he suggested that I was not the antagonist, but that I likely should have simply allowed her to enter. In my estimation, irrational behavior manifests in individuals of all ages, shapes, and sizes, and I would rather create an uncomfortable situation than potentially jeopardize the safety of my child or any other children. Therefore, am I the antagonist? All right, hear me out. Everyone on Reddit in the comments section is asserting that this individual is not the antagonist, and I concur. However, deep down, I know that if I were in this situation and an elderly woman were standing behind me attempting to enter this establishment, I would allow her in every single time. And I acknowledge that I am likely mistaken for doing so, but I am weak. I would most certainly let her in. Now, if it were a man, I would probably have no qualms in simply saying, "Hey, sorry. Yes, I cannot permit you entry. You must enter the code." But I genuinely dislike feeling as though I am being discourteous. And if there is an elderly woman behind me and she says, "Oh, I am just somebody's grandmother," I stand no chance, man. However, I do not believe this individual should feel like they were the antagonist simply for adhering to the rules. I think I might agree with the husband in this instance. Perhaps this poster should have just permitted her entry. It is simply more straightforward that way. Occasionally, one must recognize when to bend the rules to be a courteous member of society. And this is likely one of those instances. Just hold the door. Who cares? I am uncertain, though. She did, in fact, do the right thing. You do not wish to be the individual who, I do not know, lets in the murderous grandmother. This is precisely my worst-case scenario because I am inherently conflict-averse. By the way, you did not inquire, but the slime farm is functioning exceptionally well. It is pathetically slow. It is not an efficient farm, but this is more slime than I will require for the next few years. I departed without settling my bill last night because the service was so utterly abysmal. Having accumulated extensive experience in customer service, I possess considerable tolerance for when things go awry, but last night simply proved to be too much. I ordered a cocktail, an appetizer of chips and dip, and a main course of steak. After receiving my cocktail, it took 40 minutes before anyone approached my table again. I observed my server attending to the adjacent table, and they did receive their food. However, he would not even glance in my general direction to attract his attention. Now, I would not object to a wait, as I understand that a kitchen can become overwhelmed or experience other issues, but for a period of 40 minutes, at the very least, some form of communication should occur, or perhaps an offer of another beverage for goodness sake. When my food finally arrived after 40 minutes, it was merely my entree. The appetizer was absent. I reminded them, and they assured me they would bring it, but by that point, I was already disengaged. I consumed what I could finish, as I had become somewhat full, and then I waited for them to approach again to inform them that I desired the check and a to-go box. However, at this juncture, I realized that they simply would not be returning at all. So, I decided to cease waiting and simply left. I was genuinely so incensed at that point that I never in my life envisioned myself dining and dashing, but they provoked me to such an extent last night. This is rather a challenging predicament because I comprehend that subpar service is profoundly unpleasant. I detest the experience of passively observing other patrons receive their meals while I sit there, seething, wondering about the whereabouts of my food or why my server is not engaging with me. However, in days past, when I was employed as a wait person, I was also the victim of dine and dashers. I do not genuinely believe it was my fault. I was providing attentive service, ensuring the table received everything they required, yet they completely vanished without a trace after waiting until I was not looking. I had just returned from the kitchen, and upon emerging, my table was empty. It was 4 gentlemen, and they had simply absconded. My manager was displeased with me, as I had not witnessed their departure. I cannot fathom it. They simply slipped away. That, however, was not my fault. I suppose they were, in a sense, benevolent dine and dashers, given that they did, in fact, leave a tip. They left a few dollars on the table for me, which was a thoughtful gesture. I suppose they were not obligated to do that if they were merely going to leave and consume their meal without payment. I am grateful that they still considered me. I suppose in this particular scenario it is somewhat different. If you are seated and experiencing a complete absence of service, I can definitively comprehend the desire to simply stand up and depart. This individual is not posing the question of whether they are the antagonist, but I believe in this context, they are both at fault. Both the server and him. He is the antagonist for leaving without remitting payment, and the waiter is the antagonist for failing to provide adequate attention to his table. I have determined that I am not quite finished with this purple structure. I am not entirely pleased with the manner in which I constructed this unusually shaped adjoining room. Therefore, I intend to attempt to rectify that situation presently. This is the consequence of not meticulously planning builds and then proceeding impulsively to construct them while recording. There are invariably elements that I observe and think, well, that looks like garbage. I am uncertain. It is a tedious process, but I hope you appreciate the effort involved. The next question is, am I overreacting? My colleague recorded a video of me outside of work to ostensibly prove that I am not disabled. This is a peculiar situation, and I need to ascertain if I am being unreasonable for taking the measures I did. I suffer from a condition of chronic pain. To explain it to individuals who do not experience chronic pain, imagine pain existing on a scale of 1 to 10. Typically, individuals without chronic pain experience at most a 2 or 3 on a daily basis, whereas individuals with chronic pain are more akin to a 6. Consider stepping on a Lego brick or striking your funny bone. That is a brief but excruciating 8. It is comparable to a pulled muscle, resulting in pain and discomfort upon movement, but this is essentially a daily occurrence. Some days my pain level is higher. On rare, fortunate days it fluctuates around a 4, or miraculously even lower. Overall, however, I maintain an active lifestyle and function effectively. I do possess canes, but I only utilize them on days when the pain is particularly severe. Such a day occurred this past Sunday. In addition to my full-time employment, I also hold a part-time position. Due to being both physically and legally disabled, I had already submitted all necessary documentation with my employer in anticipation of requiring accommodations. I possess a handicap designation on my license plate and the corresponding placard affixed to my rearview mirror, among other provisions. I was recently relocated to a work location closer to my residence. I greatly appreciate my new team. My supervisor, Amy, is exceptionally supportive. My colleague, Casey, and I maintain a cordial relationship, though we hold identical positions as assistant coordinators under Amy. The rationale for my transfer to the new location was the company's expansion, which necessitated additional personnel, leading to my reassignment. Casey has harbored aspirations for a promotion for a considerable period, a fact widely known. I was quite transparent about my lack of interest in a promotion. Any advancement from my current position would necessitate full-time employment, and I am already engaged in full-time work. I undertake this job to bolster my savings and, quite frankly, because I derive satisfaction from the work. Being actively engaged also contributes positively to my anxiety levels. While Casey undeniably works diligently, she also has a tendency to speak over me or hastily assume control of tasks before I have the opportunity to, especially when I am clearly initiating them. She then proceeds to announce her actions, often saying something along the lines of, "Oh, I took care of that for you, OP. Do not worry." Initially, I found this irritating, but over time, I resigned myself to it, thinking, "All right then, you did not have to, but you did." I discussed this matter with my supervisor, Amy. My intention is to contribute fully, but it becomes challenging and redundant when Casey consistently endeavors to precede me in task completion. The objective was for us to divide responsibilities equitably. Amy assured me she would speak with Casey, and while I am uncertain of the outcome, the situation has remained largely unchanged, so I have simply come to accept it. Consequently, when I arrived at work on Monday utilizing my cane, numerous inquiries arose. I had emailed Amy on Sunday evening, so she was aware of my discomfort, but I generally prefer to maintain privacy. Therefore, my explanation to everyone else was that I have a medical condition that necessitates the occasional use of a cane, but not always. Amy provided accommodations, assigning me tasks that involved minimal to no physical movement. I was exceedingly grateful, and I completed all my assigned duties quite early. I then utilized the radio system to ascertain if there were any further tasks I could undertake. Casey responded, "No, she has got it covered." So, I proceeded to handle other administrative duties that are typically deferred. I simply replied with, "Okay, I will address the administrative list then." Casey attempted to assume control of this administrative work as well, but Amy ultimately intervened. I still required my cane on Tuesday. I successfully completed the majority of my administrative to-do list, and Amy expressed considerable relief at its completion. She conveyed her gratitude for my presence at work and for my assistance, rather than my taking a day off. Casey and I subsequently proceeded to the parking lot together after our shift, and she inquired about my vehicle. I indicated it. She then stated, "So, I know you are not disabled, by the way." I asked for clarification regarding her meaning. She simply reiterated her statement and then added, "So, no cane tomorrow. Understood. I will not disclose anything. Just no cane tomorrow." I stood there for a moment, contemplating, what in the actual hell? However, I had made plans to meet my closest friend, so I needed to depart promptly to arrive on time. I met my best friend, Joy, at a bar, and we had a thoroughly enjoyable time. I brought my cane with me, but to be completely honest, I did not consistently use it. For instance, I did not utilize it to walk from my table to the bar to order another drink, nor when I stood up to embrace Joy in farewell. Today, upon waking, my pain levels were elevated beyond the norm, so I brought my cane along. I sent a text message to my supervisor, Amy, informing her that I had my cane but was managing well in brief intervals, so I anticipated being capable of working. I was enjoying myself at my primary job that day, and therefore I gave Casey no further consideration. Upon my arrival at my part-time employment, Casey observed my cane and her face flushed crimson. Profoundly red. She became exceptionally agitated. I greeted everyone, and she deliberately ignored me entirely. We received our assignments for the day, and she sarcastically remarked to me, "Well, can you manage that with your cane and all?" Her tone was such that it even prompted Amy to turn and regard her with an expression of disbelief, as if to say, "What in the world?" I affirmed that I could manage and reiterated my thanks for her concern, and we proceeded with our respective duties. Once again, she rushed to preempt my actions and stated over the radio, "Do not exert yourself, OP. I have already completed this task or that one. I was utterly bewildered by all of this until approximately an hour ago, when we concluded our work. Casey again walked with me to the parking lot, but this time she paused to show me a video. It was a recording of me. It depicted me at the bar last night with Joy. I responded, why do you have a video of me? She replied, it is proof. I inquired, proof of what? She stated it was evidence that I am not as disabled as I claim to be, and that I was feigning infirmity throughout the workday yesterday, but then suddenly after work, I no longer require a cane at a bar. I wish to explain that this is simply not how chronic pain operates. Yes, I can stand up and embrace a friend or rise and walk 3 paces to order another drink, but I cannot, for instance, lean over and organize the contents of the bottom of a drawer without the aid of a chair to sit on. I desired to elucidate that chronic pain is an overarching condition, and beneath it lie a multitude of experiences and capabilities, and that, quite honestly, had she refrained from interfering with any tasks, I would have completed them. She refused to offer any consideration and declared, no cane tomorrow. I am serious. Or, I am going to speak with Chad. Chad is Amy's superior. I asked, about what? But she was already departing from me and simply entered her vehicle and drove away. I am not overly concerned about being discovered or any such outcome, but it is genuinely unsettling, and I am in the process of composing an email to Amy, with Chad copied, regarding this peculiar behavior, as it is profoundly odd. Am I being unreasonable in wanting to preemptively explain this situation? I experience anxiety and paranoia in general, so I wish to avoid overreacting or exacerbating the issue. Yes, this poster's colleague is absolutely unhinged and consumed by jealousy that their boss favors this poster over them. I am thoroughly enjoying the visual of this coworker standing next to this poster in their shared workplace parking lot, adjacent to the vehicle bearing handicap plates and the handicap placard, parked in a handicap spot, accusing this poster of not being handicapped. Listen, I cannot ascertain its credibility, but one must be exceptionally deranged to follow someone to a bar after work solely for the purpose of filming them and attempting to prove that they are not as disabled as they claim to be. If this post is authentic, I believe the situation is quite straightforward. This poster simply needs to approach their supervisor and explain that Casey followed them to a bar and filmed them without their consent. That is inherently aberrant behavior, and I am certain their supervisor would respond with, all right, Casey is terminated. It is not complicated. This is not rocket science. But I believe this video would prove more detrimental to the coworker than to the poster. This footage serves as compelling evidence of my colleague's erratic behavior, rather than confirming the poster's supposed disability as being fraudulent. Greetings. I am currently in the midst of editing and felt compelled to briefly interject with a significant update. This post has since been augmented since my initial review for this video. The revision was published a mere day after the original submission. I am unsure how I overlooked it, but I must expedite the remainder of this video's editing and publication process, so I am unable to scrutinize it at this precise moment. However, should you wish to examine the update yourself and ascertain its conclusion, the provided link in the description will grant access to both the initial narrative and its subsequent addendum. The next question is, am I in the wrong for uttering 4th times the charm when my uncle discussed remarrying? On Sunday, we convened at my uncle's residence for an informal pre-Christmas gathering, as one of my aunts had to depart that very day. I was in the backyard with my father and my uncles. My father inquired about the progress of my uncle's marriage arrangements. To provide some background, my uncle's initial marital union concluded nearly 2 decades ago. From that union, I have 3 cousins with whom I shared a close bond, but their mother was granted custody, and our interactions are now infrequent. Subsequently, approximately 8 years prior, he wed a woman from abroad, bringing her to this country. She had a gentleman already present here. She reported him to the authorities for fabricated reasons, and by the time he was released from a night in custody, she had vanished. This is merely what I have gathered. I was attending university at the time, and the marriage did not even endure for a single academic term, nor long enough for me to return and meet her. I believe it lasted a week. Then, 3 years ago, he remarried overseas, and on that occasion, her parents withdrew their consent, leading to a divorce while they were still in that country. Naturally, I have never met her either. Therefore, when my father made his remark about the status of his marriage plans, I turned to my uncle and asked if he was genuinely considering marriage again. He responded affirmatively, stating that he believes he requires a life companion. Without forethought, I casually remarked, "Fourth time's the charm." My uncle did not react favorably. My uncle did not take kindly to my comment, whereas my other uncle found it exceedingly amusing. I am quite certain my father shared in the amusement, though he maintained a diplomatic demeanor. Today, my mother informed me that my uncle expressed to my father that my utterance was remarkably impolite and disrespectful. She advised me to simply offer him an apology when we next encounter him during the Christmas festivities. I agreed, saying, "Certainly, whatever you say, I will apologize." This particular uncle has always been the jovial one who would engage with us cousins, so I assumed he would appreciate a jest, but I will certainly extend an apology. Was I in the wrong? Honestly, I believe that comment is undeniably humorous. I would have chuckled, but it is objectively unkind to deliver such a remark to one's uncle. This poster is undoubtedly in the wrong for making that statement, yet it appears they grasped that their words were inappropriate. I suspect they simply misjudged the atmosphere, which admittedly does happen. I can certainly relate to that sentiment. But yes, the act of jesting about his uncle entering his fourth marriage is indeed a sensitive matter. One would likely need a very strong rapport with their uncle to get away with such a remark. I do not, however, believe this poster is inherently a cad. I think they merely made an ill-advised joke unintentionally, and I believe that provided an apology is offered, it will suffice. His uncle will eventually move past it, and perhaps he will finally cease marrying women from overseas and subsequently divorcing them almost immediately, within a week. That is quite astonishing. That concludes the Reddit stories for today's Minecraft segment. The villagers appeared content with their relocated dwellings, despite the forced displacement. I am uncertain how this individual managed to enter this enclosure, but they are now permanently confined. A very swift conclusion to today's video. No elaborate closing remarks. I simply wish to express my gratitude for your viewership, a rather minimalist farewell. I tend to become overly absorbed in my concluding monologues, which is detrimental. It is harmful to the analytics. YouTube frowns upon it. Consequently, I am not rambling. I would never engage in rambling in an outro. All right, very well. Bye.